Um, yeah, she's just starting.
All right, it is starting and recording.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today with our esteemed guests and experienced peace negotiators who are looking to the future after this extremely difficult time and continuingly extremely difficult time on the ground in the region, to look forward to the possibility for peace and really establishing a robust framework for peace in the future. So I'd really love to welcome Hiba Husseini and Yossi Beilin. I will introduce them. And before I do, I also I'm Yael Aronoff. I'm a professor in James Madison College at Michigan State University and direct the MSU's Serling Institute for Jewish Studies and Modern Israel. And I wanted to thank the wide support we have across campus for hosting our wonderful guests today, which include James Madison College, the College of Arts and Letters, the College of Social Science, the Residential College of Arts and Humanities, International Studies and Programs, the Asian Studies Center, the Department of History, and the Department of Political Science. So there's widespread enthusiasm for us hosting you. And of course, you were going to come in person, and because of the war, you weren't able to get flights out in time. So we regret not hosting you again as we did in 2022 when you came in person. Um, to Michigan State University, but we're thrilled to have you with us today, and we hope to have you in person in the future, sometime in the future. So thank you so much during these really horrible times to give us hope and a framework and a path towards peace that is eminently achievable in the future. So I will
Thank
introduce
you
you.
for having us.
Yeah, I will introduce you more properly. But Veteran peace negotiators Yossi Beilin and Hiba Husseini will discuss their plan for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, a path forward for the future, and their activities around the globe to promote a peaceful future. Since 2020, Yossi Beilin and Hiba Husseini have been the main authors of the Holy Land Confederation as a facilitator of the two-state solution. And it is an unofficial draft proposal for a permanent status agreement developed between 2020 and 2022 by a joint Israeli-Palestinian team led by Beilin and Husseini. This is what they presented with their contributors in 2022 at Michigan State University, but so much has happened since 2022 that they worked on an updated version and a second edition, which they finished in July 2025. So we're also privileged to hear from that, and I know this I recommend that to everyone to read, and the students in my class had the privilege of reading it and discussing it. Uh, Yossi Beilin's lengthy career of public service began in 1984 with his appointment as cabinet secretary, a member of Knesset between 1988 and 2008 for the Meretz Yachad Party from 2006 to 2008, and the Labor Party from 1988 to 1999. Dr. Beilin has held various ministerial positions in different governments between 1984 and 2008, including Deputy Foreign Minister, Deputy Finance Minister, Minister of Economy and Planning, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister for Religious Affairs, and Minister of Justice. Dr. Beilin initiated the Oslo peace process and the informal Geneva Peace Accord and serves now as the chairman of the Geneva Initiative, the Palestinian Peace Coalition, and the HL Education for Peace, jointly known as the Geneva Initiative, launched the Two-State Solution Coalition in April 2018 with generous support from the European Commission within the framework of the EU Peacebuilding Initiative. The coalition brings together more than 20 influential Palestinian and Israeli civil society organizations that support and promote the two-state solution. Dr. Beilin is chairman of the steering committee of the HL Education for Peace, and he's founder and president of Beilin International Affairs, Ltd., an international consulting firm since 2008, and co-founded the Economic Cooperation Foundation in 1990. He earned a PhD in political science from Tel Aviv University in 1981 and served as a global distinguished professor at NYU from 2022 to 2023. He is the author of numerous books, including The Path to Geneva, The Quest for a Permanent Agreement, and most recently, Secrets I Won't Take With Me, which he also talked about at Michigan State, that book a few years ago. And several of your books we have readings from in classes I've been teaching over the years, and lots of students and scholars use in their research. Both also a huge contribution to academia. Hiba Husseini is the managing partner at the law firm of Husseini and Husseini. Under her management, the firm serves a large domestic and international client base on a wide range of legal matters, and she's also practiced law in Washington, D.C. Ms. Husseini is a political and policy advisor and analyst who chaired the legal committee to final status negotiations between the Palestinians and Israelis. She has served as legal advisor to the peace process negotiations since 1994. And Ms. Husseini participates in various meetings that seek to interject innovative thinking to the hard and complex issues involved in the peace process, especially Jerusalem. She has written widely on the peace process, the rule of law, economic development, and Jerusalem. Ms. Husseini has co-authored with Dr. Yossi Beilin the Holy Land Confederation and an enabler to the two-state solution. She serves on the boards of various educational, professional, cultural, business, and nonprofit organizations, including the vice chair of the Palestine boards from 1998 to 2005, member of the International Advisory Panel of the American Law Institute, and contributor in 2015 to the drafting of the restatement of the Law Fourth, the Foreign Relations Law of the United States. She's been on the board of trustees of Al-Quds University, the American board of the Middle East Partnership for Peace Fund, and is a fellow in the International Dialogue Initiative. Ms. Husseini holds a Juris Doctor from Georgetown University in 1992, a master's in political science from George Washington University, and a master's in social science and corporate finance from the University of Sorbonne, and a BA in political science from the University of Tennessee. So, I'm always humbled to have you with us, and you've had such an enormous impact on Track 2 negotiations, on all the work that you've done throughout your lives to try to promote peace. And I know the past few years have therefore been especially painful for both of you to witness and watch. And we can't thank you enough for all the work that you're doing. On the ground in practice throughout your lives, and also contributing to scholarship and to students being able to have the opportunity to talk with you and to ask you questions. So one of the questions, I'll start asking a few questions, and we'll get the discussion started. And then those of you who are on the webinar, please feel free at any time to put a question in the Q&A, and then we'll get to your questions, or as many of the questions as possible. But Hiba and Husseini and Yossi Beilin are very generous and taking your questions seriously and answering them thoughtfully. So please don't hesitate to write those questions in the Q&A. So I'll start off with the first question that you've devoted so much to trying to get to a place where we'd see an independent Palestinian state living alongside Israel in terms of the two-state solution. What has brought you, if you can walk us through kind of what you were thinking in terms of the framework for so many years to try to get to a two-state solution, and then where you started thinking that a confederation, how it would better facilitate that, and how you got to that point. Because I think that there's still so many people, even though the idea of a confederation is gaining there's more awareness of it in the last 5 years perhaps than before, there's still many people who don't really know what a confederation would look like or don't know, are not as familiar with that framework. So if you could kind of, I know it's a large question, walk us through kind of your initial kind of framework and the move towards thinking that a confederation might better facilitate getting us or being able to implement a two-state solution. Sorry for that long-winded question. Thank you. Ms. Husseini, would you like to go first and then, or either one, if you'd like, would like to talk first?
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Professor, for having us and for this invitation. And again, it would have been a pleasure to be there in person, but here we are,
Mhm.
uh, stuck where we are given the
Mhm.
circumstances. So I'm appreciative for the fact that we can still have the webinar via Zoom. Um, why the Confederation? The Confederation is not a substitute for the two-state solution, but rather it's an enabler to the two-state solution. I think the idea stemmed from the fact that there are some issues that where the neither side, Israeli or Palestinian, is willing to fully compromise on. And those issues have been very complex and difficult to tackle and may have, and over the years have proven in different sets of negotiations from the 1995 interim agreement until the last set of formal negotiations in 2008 proved that they were a zero-sum game. Those are the issues related to the settlements, to the delineation of the full borders between the two states, to the city, the old city of Jerusalem, and so forth and so on. So the idea stemmed again from finding a way to end this conflict, but at the same time without having to make those very, very costly, risky compromises that may lead nowhere and would get us again and again to a point where we cannot find a mechanism that would work for the two sides. So again, it's an enabler. It's a novel idea whereby and again also we also wanted to get out of the stalemate of the conflict management because the conflict has been managed in a way that led to continuous tension, escalation. We saw all the wars between Hamas and Israel in the last years since 2008 going forward up until October 7th, of course. But our idea came before October 7th. We had anticipated an escalation, but we didn't believe that it might be stemming from or coming out of Gaza. We thought probably a third intifada coming out of the West Bank. So we wanted to offer negotiators and future leaders again an idea to demonstrate that there can be a way to address these thorny issues. The two sides have been thinking of the issues as existential. And again, we wanted to say, okay, here's a model that would work for both of us. And I think I'll let Dr. Beilin give you more insights, and then we can answer the details in terms of the issues of the confederation and the elements of the confederation.
Thank you, Hiba. I must tell you that usually our answers are more or less similar to the same questions. Not always exactly, but generally speaking, it's the same answer, but not to the question that we were asked now, because the motivation is different. For Hiba, the issue of self-determination for the Palestinian people is the first priority. For me, the first priority has been since ever. I mean, since I was a soldier in the 67 war, the end of occupation. I was worried about an option in which we are going to rule another people which doesn't want us, even hates us, and suffered under in our conflicts. Both of us suffered a lot, but and each of us remembers the suffering, his or her own sufferings. But this is a fact. And the point for me was to assure that Israel remains democratic and liberal. And if, God forbid, Jews are a minority, which is dominating a majority of Palestinians, which is still not the case, but we are not far from it, then the whole idea of Zionism, which is very important for me, cannot be sustainable. So for me, in all those years, in every function that I fulfilled, the issue of a border between Israel and the Palestinians was a first priority. And there were different solutions. There was a solution of a Jordanian-Palestinian state, a Jordanian-Palestinian confederation. And none of them worked. At a certain point in history, in 1988, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, changed its mind about the future relations with Israel and accepted something which the Palestinians had rejected in 1947, and that was a two-state solution. In 1947, the UN suggested a two-state solution, a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jewish leadership accepted it. The Palestinian leadership rejected it, although there were some Palestinians who quite supported it at the beginning, but then they understood that they could not continue and support it. So there was one front of Palestinians against it. And after so many years, the Palestinian leadership said, okay, let's go for it. And that was the big change. Now, that was after the decision of King Hussein of Jordan to give up on the West Bank, which Jordan had occupied until 1967, and in the war which it launched against Israel, Israel got the West Bank. So at the beginning, King Hussein still toyed with the idea of maybe he will insist upon getting back the West Bank, or at least most of it, and then he gave up on it. And a few months later, the Palestinian leadership decided that it is ready to take it upon itself. And since then, I supported an agreement with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which has been the official and legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, at least since 1975, in a decision of the Arab League. So one thing is that because I needed a border and I searched for the partner, I can say that in 1988 it became clear that here is the partner. It is the PLO. So this is one thing. Another thing is that later on, in order to market the idea of a two-state solution, which was quite difficult for many Israelis to accept. They were afraid. I mean, we are all afraid of each other, both of us, Palestinians and Israelis, all these years. And what happened is that my camp, my ideological camp, the more liberal, the more moderate, used a slogan like, we are here and they are there, in order to convince more and more people to accept the idea of a two-state solution. And I must admit that I didn't like it, but I didn't fight against it. This is the truth. Maybe because I told myself, okay, if this is the only way that the majority will accept the idea of two-state solution, that we are here and they are there, meaning actually we will not need to see them too much. So be it, as long as there is a two-state solution. Later on, things may change. Now, during all these years, as you heard in the very generous biography, which just a few minutes ago, I was involved in many efforts to find solutions. Many of them official, but also other were unofficial. And I heard a repeated criticism on the peacemakers. One, you don't touch 48 and you only touch 67. The meaning of it was that you don't touch the very sensitive issue of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, when Israel actually banished 730,000 Palestinians who lived in Palestine and had to leave, either because they were afraid to remain or because we just told them to leave their homes, and they became refugees. And this point was not properly referred to in our previous attempts to solve the conflict. And the other one was that during the years, more and more Israeli settlers settled in the West Bank, and then also Gaza, but Gaza was solved and we left Gaza. And to think about a real option of an evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people, of Israelis, from the West Bank is unrealistic. When we finished the Oslo process, there were about 90 to 100,000 settlers in the West Bank. Today, it is 500,000. And one has to add to it also about 200,000 in East Jerusalem. Now, some of them, or most of them, will become parts of Israel as part of a land swap, a very small land swap. But so their problem will be solved. But about 200,000 will find themselves in the future Palestinian state. And as I said, no Israeli prime minister is going to evacuate them. It's too many. They are sure that they are already won the case, that most of the territory is under their rule, and nobody will divide the land anymore. Of course, this is not the case. But in order to suggest something which is very realistic, we came to the conclusion that the best way would be to do the following. to tell all those who will find themselves beyond the new border in the future Palestinian state. It's either that you go to Israel and get compensation, as other settlers did in the past, those who had to leave the Sinai Peninsula and those who had to leave the Gaza Strip. If you want to do that, fine. If you don't, then you will be allowed to remain in the new Palestinian state as Israeli citizens, but Palestinian permanent residents, and the same number of Palestinian citizens would be allowed to live in Israel as Palestinian citizens, but also as Israeli permanent residents. So these are the two things which we were criticized on and that we found solutions. The solution for the issue of the refugees or the 60 or the 48 problem is that for the first time in history, we wrote together a narrative of the conflict. And so we did touch the most problematic issues in our story. And I believe that we did something here, something successfully, because we did not try to bypass it anymore. So this is the case. What does it mean? My last line here. Yes, peace is possible. There is no question that peace is possible. It is possible in Kashmir. It is possible. I mean, you just name it, and I'll tell you, yes, it is possible. The problem is whether, or the question is whether both sides would like to solve the problem. And once you have leaders on both sides who are committed to solve the problem, you will solve it. And we are suggesting a library of solutions. If one side, and especially if both sides, actually are coming to the negotiating table in order to be nice to a third party, imagine that there is a president in the United States named Trump who wants very much to have a Nobel Prize, and he is pushing both sides to negotiate. They will come to the negotiating table in order to cater to his wishes. But when they are there, they will not find solution. They will say that it is very, very difficult and many others tried it in the past and all of them failed, and they are also unable to solve the problem. So what you need is that the parties themselves would like to solve the problem. The peace camp on the Palestinian side and the peace camp on the Israeli side believe that without a solution to the problem, Israel is in a very, very, very difficult and the Palestinian situation, and the same goes for the Palestinians. But not everybody thinks so. And regretfully, I don't know how to explain it, but regretfully, there are those who say that we were born to live on our sword. So they say. It's not my interpretation. And we should continue to do that. And in my view, it is horrible, but I cannot ignore it.
Thank you. I don't know if by the way, I see there's already one question which I'll get to a little bit later. And please, those of you who are on, feel free to add your questions and we'll get to them. I don't know if you could elaborate a little more about, certainly one of the great innovations that you talked about was the joint narrative, as well as kind of this innovative way to um, have some Israelis be in Palestine and some Palestinians be in Israel with this arrangement of citizenship in one and permanent residency in the other. I don't know if you could also speak to, I know that part of it has the intricacies of Jerusalem, and maybe Ms. Husseini, you could speak to that. And also, I appreciate that you both put this as kind of an alternate, another pathway that might be attractive to people, but also, still having the two-state without confederation on the table if, if whoever wanted to do that first and then move to confederation, because there might be the question in terms of the confederation of the proposal that if you still had these 200,000 settlers in the West Bank and so forth, but if they were offered, many of them, money for a house within Israel in the agreed upon borders, that most of them would reluctantly still evacuate rather than using violence or being forced to move. And then the fewer, I know I haven't seen current surveys. In the past, there were some surveys indicated maybe 4% of them would turn to violence or something. Maybe that has grown over time since. But of course, the evacuation of far fewer, I don't know whether there's 8,000 or 9,000 in Gaza in 2005, people were taken by force who didn't agree to go voluntarily, but it ended up not being violent. So I don't know if there's still that scenario or if there's this beyond that, this fear of not even wanting to provide incentives to most of those 200,000 settlers were there to be an agreement to move back. So that's just kind of one question. But Ms. Husseini, if you could start with, I know you've worked a lot on Jerusalem and live in East Jerusalem and worked a lot on those proposals. If you could walk us through that, and of course, anything else you'd want to add in terms of the framework or anything else that Dr. Beilin has mentioned, please, you're not limited to anything, but that was just one question concerning Jerusalem.
No, certainly. No, our idea for Jerusalem is that the old city would be an open city. It's too small to be separated by hard borders, physical borders. So we want to keep the space open. In terms of arrangements, the entry and exit will be for the Palestinians, and their visitors and tourists will come in from one side and exit from the same side. And for the Israeli side, entry and exit, along with the visitors, worshippers, of course, on both sides. And tourists will come in from the Israeli side and exit from the Israeli side. So there will be a formal entry into the old city, but then people move freely within the two sides and have the right to worship, to enjoy the old city and so forth and so on. With respect to the holy sites, which is the more sensitive issue, our proposal is that we maintain the so-called status quo. The status quo in 1967, basically, we would hold on to that same status quo with respect to the rights to the holy sites. In other words, Jewish sites are sovereign Jewish Israeli sites. Muslim and Christian sites are sovereign Muslim and Christian sites. The churches will, who until today, maintain full sovereignty over their churches. The Temple Mount, Al Haram al Sharif, is a bit more difficult in terms of the status quo, but our proposal is not to challenge that. Our proposal is to realize the sensitivity. So the Western Wall will remain Jewish, sovereign, and Al Haram al Sharif will remain Muslim. And the idea also for the openness of the old city to eventually go into the east side and west side of Greater Jerusalem. So, because in our vision, East Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Palestine. West Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel. And but there will be a border. It's very difficult today to have a hard border, physical border. So we have to work out the neighborhood issues, and I think on this point, Dr. Beilin likes to see gradual openness. I prefer to see an immediate openness, but that's out there for the negotiators to consider. Again, the idea is to borrow from the Clinton parameters. Jewish neighborhoods are Jewish, Arab neighborhoods are Arab Palestinian neighborhoods. There will be two municipalities that would cooperate for the management of the daily life, law and order, and security in the old city. Because the idea of the confederation is to have cooperation and collaboration at the institutional level, yet without having. This is not the idea of a federation like in the a Swiss model or the German model or the United Arab model. Rather, each
Or the United States, which is another federation.
yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Yossi. But the idea, so basically, but the we think that there would be full cooperation on security issues, economic and trade matters, in natural resources, environmental matters, and so forth and so on. And the same would apply to Jerusalem, basically. So that's in a nutshell our idea for Jerusalem.
About the settlers, they will have to choose. If you ask them today, none of them would like to move. When it is a fait accompli, and they know that there is already peace between the two parties, and there is a Palestinian state, and there are borders. Many of them, let us say the number is more or less 200,000 of settlers who will find themselves on the other side of the border. They will have to decide whether they want to remain there or get the compensations. Many of them will take the compensations, I presume. On the other hand, there are families there with four almost 5 generations since 67. And they would like to remain there. The idea is that no Palestinian and no Israeli will be removed from him or her place. None of them. I think that it is a very important principle. And once this is the case, the Israelis will have to respect the Palestinian law. And if they don't do that, the Palestinian police will come to the Israeli police, will take them and say, these are your citizens. Tell them that they cannot be hosts in our country and behave like that. And that's the whole story. I simplify here, but generally speaking, this is the idea. And it is so difficult to know what might be the developments because people are asking us, did you talk to the settlers? No, we did not talk to the settlers about it. Had we talked to them, they would have said, no, we don't want to move. We don't want a division of the country. We don't want a Palestinian state. We know that. We know that. And they will have to play according to the rules, to the decisions which will be taken. But the big thing here is that there will be no confrontation, no physical confrontation. which was the case in the past with all the other withdrawals. And I think that it might, I mean, the point here, at least for me, and indirectly for Hiba too, because Hiba wants to have a solution, and if this is the solution, so she accepts it. Now, I think that for many people it would be difficult to live, and they may stay there, and and we are actually giving them the right to decide, but not the right to veto peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is they can decide for themselves, but not for the two peoples. And that is the point here.
I see that there, go ahead,
I, yeah, I
Susan.
wanted to add just I think you because you asked us about the distinction between residency and citizenship. I think the idea is that when the Israeli Jewish settlers become permanent residents of the state of Palestine, we are also proposing reciprocity, whereby an equal number of Palestinians would take up permanent residency in the state of Israel. And that category of permanent residents, Palestinian permanent residents in the state of Israel, is a distinct category from the refugee category. So refugees will exercise the right of return to Palestine, but a limited number of them will also return to Israel based on negotiations and on family reunification, humanitarian considerations. So the categories are distinct there as well. So that's a further elaboration. Now, on the narrative, which was your other question, I think the narrative, as Dr. Beilin mentioned at the outset, was to not only to tackle the very sensitive, difficult elephant in the room, which is the 1948 refugee problem and the Nakba and so forth and so on, when the state of Israel was established in 1948, and to really to demonstrate that it can be addressed. But we also went through the historical, chronological attachment of the two people to the land. So the narrative predates the 1948 period, and gives for the thoughtful reader, if you will, the detail that so that there will not be this challenge that is currently, and the debate. I mean, who belongs there first, and so forth and so on. There is a historical fact who was there, and how that historical, chronological, factual statement is recited by us. So I think that also answers a lot of skepticism and a lot of questions for people who really want to think deeply about the issue of the narrative.
Yeah, no, I think that's very helpful for everyone to see that joint narrative. There are a couple questions in the Q&A, so I'll also present you with those. One was in terms of Jerusalem, would you anticipate further tension or violence in the proposed shared city of Jerusalem? And also, there was a second question, is a two-state solution possible under Prime Minister Netanyahu? So for that second question, I'd also want to broaden it to current both Israeli Palestinian leadership as well as potential future leadership, perhaps after the October 27th elections in Israel, or when there are future elections among Palestinians for new leadership. So if you could both discuss the current leaderships of both and potential future leaderships as well. Sorry, it's a lot to there's two questions, so you can take, which one you want to take first. And the other was, about what do you do if violence erupts in this new framework in Jerusalem?
Hiba should talk about Bibi.
No, I'll leave that to you. He's not my specialty. Go ahead. But I
I
don't
don't
want to
think
see him. Let me put it this way. I don't want to see him around anytime soon.
well, he he has been in power for such a long while and
Mm-hmm.
said already everything, everything, including support for a two-state solution. He went several times to the UN Security General Assembly and said that this is the solution for the two peoples, and repeated it and repeated it. And then he said, "No, now I understand that it is impossible. Why is it impossible? Why now you understand? Because there was violence. Why was there violence? Because there was no solution. If there is a solution, then why should you oppose it?" But I let us say so. I don't believe that he will be Prime Minister of Israel after October this year. According to the polls, there is no one poll, public opinion polls, which is suggesting that he could form a coalition. If he doesn't, and there is another coalition, it is not automatically a coalition for a two-state solution. And it will be a uphill battle to go for it and to convince the different coalition members to support a two-state solution. Unless they have a better one, but I have not heard a better one. Maybe there is a better. Um, if he is re-elected, then because he already said everything, he may say again, with a very different coalition, of course, not with the current most rightist coalition ever, that he is ready to support it. Actually, it is not only that he said in his speeches that he supported a two-state solution. Only in 2000, in January 2020, when President Trump, in his first term, came with his quite impossible plan, which was called, like everything else, Trump plan. Netanyahu went out of his way, left everything, went to the United States, went to Washington, participated in the event which marked the new plan and supported it wholeheartedly. Now, the plan of Trump was a two-state solution. So I cannot say that he will never return to this idea, mainly because it is a very strong idea. It is not that he has something which can replace it and still assure that Israel is Jewish and democratic. There is nothing like that. So even if it is not the peace camp which is ruling the country, I believe that there is a chance that another leader will go for it too.
And in terms of current and or future Palestinian leadership, I don't know if you want to address
Well,
that as well.
sure. Certainly we're long overdue for an election. I'd just like to flag there's something is very interesting is going to be happening tomorrow in Gaza. They're going to make a trial for a municipal election in the municipality of Deir el-Balah in Rafah tomorrow in Gaza. So this is going to be very, very telling And it's difficult circumstances, but I think it's an examination and to test how people are going to vote tomorrow. But generally speaking, I think on the Palestinian side, the Palestinian Authority needs to be revamped. And we need to have new blood, new thinking to lead the people. There is a lot of disenchantment with the leadership of Fatah currently in the West Bank. And there is a call by especially the youth in Palestine for a change in government rather than appointment after the other of the prime minister and the ministers by the president. And also there's a need to have the parliament reenacted, what we call the legislative council, to reestablished, because right now all laws are being passed by the president himself. So there are a lot of questions about the legitimacy, having just like Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Abbas has been in office for a very long time. He's also getting on with age and so forth. So the injection of new blood through an election would be very important. Now, let's be also very frank here and realistic. President Abbas has been advocating peace and has been seeking to end this conflict and to have a negotiations, but Prime Minister Netanyahu did not find him to be the partner. And although Prime Minister Netanyahu announces, and from a Palestinian perspective, it's seen as a lip service to the two-state solution. He really doesn't want a two-state solution, or if he wants it himself, his coalition doesn't want it, so he plays to his coalition so that he can stay in office and in power. So there are a lot of challenges and complexities involved here. But all in all, President Abbas has the goodwill for a peaceful set of negotiations. And there are opportunities for young youth. We're not talking youth in terms of 20s and 30s, maybe, people in their 40s and 50s, because President Abbas is in his late 80s. So to answer this question very quickly, yes, we are looking forward for a change. But we also want to have stability, and we want to have national unity as well. We have to have a reconciliation. Without reconciliation, which has been very damaging for us and has played into the hands of Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, in terms of, if the Palestinians don't have national unity and they don't see eye to eye, and there's a schism between Fatah and Hamas, then this has empowered Prime Minister Netanyahu and the right-wing coalition in Israel to undermine the PA. And one example has been to withhold the revenues generated from customs collections and duties that Israel collects on our behalf. And so the Palestinian Authority has very difficult financial crisis and is often on the brink of bankruptcy, but for the financial support that comes from countries like the EU and others. And some in the past, it used to be also US and Arab countries. Also, it doesn't help with the settler violence in the West Bank and the annexation and the talk about annexing the West Bank by the Israeli right-wing government. So a lot of factors have also undermined the authority and delegitimized the authority of President Abbas.
I don't know if both of you could also see whether there are any kind of, who you point to as a potential future leaders who might be able to move things forward in the right direction towards a Palestinian independent state next to an Israeli state through confederation or elsewhere. I don't know, you know, yeah, if there are particular kind of leaders in the future that you think could promote this and move things along.
Well, I mean, on the Palestinian side, certainly, I mean, one unifying voice and leader would be someone like Marwan Barghouti, who has been imprisoned by Israel since the Second Intifada, which is he has been in prison for over 20 years now. But he is a very good candidate, and he has the legitimacy to unify Gaza, West Bank, and has the acceptance by all factions. There are also, I think, the upcoming elections, which we are hoping to hold in the coming year or so, both presidential and parliamentarian and municipal in the coming months, would give us an idea of potential younger leaders and potential candidates who have the legitimacy to be representative of all Palestinians. We didn't answer the question on Jerusalem and violence. I think, as Dr. Beilin mentioned, if you have a solution, there would be no violence, or violence would be limited. I think you cannot control eruption of violence here and there. But then once you have a peace agreement, once you have defined the relationship, once you have cooperation, once you have law and order and security, I think those factors will reduce tension and limit it considerably.
That's right. I don't know if you wanted to address different leaders or political parties that perhaps in the next election or in the future might be more open to moving things in a positive direction. Or
In Israel, you have Golan, who is the head of the Democrats, Yair Golan, who is saying it openly, and he is the most, he is the clearest of all of them. But also Gadi Eisenkot, the former chief of staff, and Yair Lapid, the former prime minister, are supporting the two-state solution and understand that this is the only solution. The problem is that Bennett, who is a right winger, and who gets now the biggest support in the opposition, is totally against the two-state solution and any division of the land. And so I hope that the fact that he will lean on a moderate coalition will have much to do with his decision about this one. We will have to think about the way to deal with the negotiations on a two-state solution when the prime minister himself opposes it. We did it in the past, by the way. We tried it in the talks of Kerry, 2013-14. Actually, Netanyahu said to the Minister of Justice, Tzipi Livni, please negotiate. I don't believe that there is a chance, but please negotiate, and you can do something like that, and we will see. And eventually, it did not happen. But theoretically, we have a precedent for a prime minister who is not enthusiastic about such negotiations, but because of the coalition, he allows members of the coalition to go for it.
Again, I want to invite those of you listening, if you want to write any additional questions, you're most welcome to. I wanted to ask also what you've been engaged in terms of talking to different bodies or politicians around the world, or even among Israelis and Palestinians, to try to get them to be more aware of this confederation as a facilitator of the two-state solution idea, as an option to be pursued and supported.
I'll start. We have been having, I mean, since its launch in the US, actually, we had meetings at the State Department level and the Senate and Congress. So it was very, very welcome at the time in terms of a discussion. Unfortunately, as we were having these discussions in Washington, the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, because we were there in February of that year. But we did go to New York, and we met with the UN Secretary, Mr. Guterres, and he welcomed the idea as well. Yossi can speak better to that, because they also have had a personal relationship over the years. But since we have been touring European cities, the EU headquarters in Brussels, and we launched the work under the so-called Berlin Initiative. We were invited there to and hoped to develop a working relationship there as well with various institutions. We participate a lot of webinars, seminars online, and we discuss with think tanks around the world. We also write various opinions here and there for publication. We have not had, we had a meeting with President Herzog of Israel, and Yossi met with President Abbas. I have not. I met with other PLO representatives. We have not had the opportunity yet to have outreach at the grassroots level yet. The conditions have not been conducive to that. Yossi, would you like to add more?
Yeah, we met with people like Bill Clinton, who
Sure.
read it carefully and said that it is a very good idea, and it is better than his principles of 2000. The general attitude towards this idea is the following. There are those who say, good luck. We are very happy that Palestinian and Israelis are still meeting and talking to each other. And if this is what you agree upon, we will not oppose it. There are those who think that it is too much a kind of a dream rather than realistic. And those who say, let us go first to the two-state solution, and then we will talk about something else, like the confederation. The point is that our idea, as Hiba said already, is that the confederation is a facilitator for the two-state solution. It is not, a confederation is not just nice to have. It is a tool which might enable us to go for a two-state solution, because otherwise, if every idea for a two-state solution is accompanied by uprooting hundreds of thousands of Israelis from the West Bank, it might be impossible to do. That is the point. So they must know that at the end of the day, they will have perhaps to live to live under the Palestinian leadership, but they will not have to leave their homes. So it cannot be just something which is offered to the parties once they have the two-state solution. But in order to have the two-state solution, we need the confederation.
So I wanted to ask the role of public opinion and support, which kind of fluctuates over time. As you know, there are periods where, over many, many years, even through the Second Intifada and other periods of violence, where at different times majorities supported a two-state solution, even when they distrusted the other side's intentions and so forth, and there was distrust there. Over the years, sometimes that's turned into a plurality that still supports it compared to other solutions. And I think, more recently, the relative support for two states has risen in Gaza. It's gone down a little bit among Israelis in the aftermath, and for the immediate term, at least in the aftermath of October 7th. So it fluctuates. But for those who see that that distrust has only grown in the last couple of years, what do you say in terms of the extent to which that is an obstacle or a challenge? And you might look to other situations of before or after Oslo, or before or after the Camp David negotiations with Israel and Egypt. To what extent is public opinion uh, a challenge, and the distrust that has only grown in the last couple of years? And what, if anything, can be done? It seems like often the Israeli leaderships and the Palestinian leaderships, and I'm not even talking about this moment, but in the past, have not spoken to each other's publics as maybe could be possible in order to kind of strengthen kind of trust in one's intentions and so forth. So I wanted to speak to kind of the role of public opinion, and to what extent that could be shaped, to what extent that has been positive in various points, and what can be done to influence it.
Well, I'll speak to the West Bank and Gaza, of course. In terms of the public opinion, certainly in the West Bank, there's been more of a tilt towards a so-called rights-based solution, which for the people who are advocating this position or this opinion, it means one state. But I think the reaction stem from the circumstances. I mean, I think bottom line, Palestinians want an end of conflict, an end of occupation, and again the right to self-determination, as Yossi mentioned. I think the going extreme and saying one state or rights-based is to challenge Israel's notions of demography and democracy, and to say, hey, you want to keep a heavy hand in ruling and having a strong military rule over the West Bank with checkpoints and with restrictions on movement and on having international borders, and on not dealing with the refugee issues and so forth and so on. And remember, they're also influenced by the Palestinians, say in Jordan and elsewhere. I mean, that's the huge refugee community as well there, and in Lebanon. So I think it stems again from the circumstances where the disappointment and the frustration for not having been able to have a two-state solution materialize has led them to go into that direction. But my sense from talking to a lot of people, when you push them a little bit and say, what do you mean by one state? I mean, do you really think you're going to be having one parliament and one government and one national election and how do you want to deal? How do you think you're going to deal with all of this? Even if the demographic numbers eventually speak more in favor of the Palestinians, I think today the Israeli population count is higher than the Palestinian one. We have around 2.1 million in Gaza, and around 3.5 million in the West Bank, and you have around 200 to around to 300,000 in East Jerusalem and its outskirts. Bottom line is that for me, it's unrealistic to have a one-state solution. Yossi, would you like to comment on that?
Just to say that from our experience, people are following their leaderships. That happened with Egypt, that happened with Jordan, it happened with the PLO. This is one thing. And the second thing is that peace is made in most of the cases, I believe, or in many cases, after clashes and very tough conflicts, not out of the blue. So this is the right time.
Yeah, and I think that you've also pointed in the past to kind of a dramatic shift in public opinion, to exemplify what you're saying. Before Oslo, there are people who are more skeptical, and then after you played a
Because
big
they go
role.
after the
Yeah, yeah,
leaders. I mean,
yeah.
if they trust Rabin, if they trust Begin, they support them. Even if they themselves thought that it would be a mistake, but they are convinced by the leaders, not only in non-democratic countries, but also in democratic countries.
There is one more question in the Q&A. Say, are there any plans, theories on how to rebuild Gaza?
Well, you have now a whole a machinery which deals with it. It is a very serious one, which is now in Cairo, but should be in Gaza itself, under the leadership of Medvedev, the former Bulgarian foreign minister, who is a very serious person. Hiba knows him, and I know him. And they are suggesting very concrete plans to rebuild Gaza. The bottom line will be budget, and it will cost a lot. And the question is again whether the world will be ready to to fulfill the promises and to help Gaza, and Israel should be, in my view, part of the efforts to rebuild Gaza.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there are plans, and there are very serious plans, and Mr. Nikolai Mladinov is the High Representative under the UN resolution, which has taken the Trump 20-piece plan under its structure. So then there's a structure. There's also a Gaza committee of Palestinians, all from Gaza. They're based in Cairo right now. There are serious efforts to get them on the ground in Gaza, and to start with the implementation of the plans for removal of the debris, for building the infrastructure. There are lots of plans for the health sector, the everything, and to restoring law and order, basically, instead of, because now you also have some gangs coming up, taking control of certain parts. So there are a lot of, it's very, very complicated, but there are a lot of good plans. And of course, the budget financial support. There have been pledges, but no real spending has taken place.
And
And I was sorry to interrupt
no,
you. And of course, the Iran-Israel-US war has overshadowed Gaza, and the plan, and global attention has been refocused, and the global economic crisis and oil crisis and all of that. I mean, it's so much instability in the Middle East, and overlapping conflicts.
sorry, I had thought you're finished, so I apologize
Not at
for
all. Not at
interrupting you.
all.
So certainly there are so many challenges, including the budget one, but also serious people who are also involved in trying to meet those challenges. Of course, one of those challenges is the whole notion of disarmament of Hamas, and how do
Mhm.
you do that, and who's going to do that? And it seems like at different times Hamas has, said that they're not going to disarm at all, and then there are other times where sometimes they're saying, well, maybe, they'll keep certain weapons but give up other weapons. I don't know if you're aware of any kind of creative ideas that may be around for that, for creating incentives for, positive incentives that wouldn't necessarily require, for in all instances, kind of the use of force to do it, or if in those instances where the use of force is needed, who, I know there have been all different kinds of countries who've talked about participating, whether it's Egypt or Bangladesh or others, but there does seem to be, as in many instances, a kind of a reluctance, to do that, because of the violence that will ensue again, around the possibility of civilian areas. So I don't know if there are any creative ideas that you're aware of, that which there would be some compromises within Hamas, other kinds of incentives, or anything like that in terms of that particular challenge, that also, in the path forward, is one of the issues that people are in the more immediate term talking about.
Ireland is a good example that I know, and I know that we are trying to learn from their experience. I mean,
Uh,
Northern Ireland.
mm, that's a very good example, and I agree with that. And also, I mean, also Hamas accepted the 20-point peace plan, and the related UN Security Council 2803, and that includes decommissioning of weapons. But again, the efforts on the ground, because in terms of also boots, the so-called boots on the ground, I think there's a lot of hesitation by Arab countries to come in. Um, Indonesia, Pakistan, still all up in the air. It's going to take huge efforts to also um, uh, convince Israel to allow the Palestinian Committee, the Gaza Committee, to come in, and for international organizations to come in and start dealing with the infrastructure and the humanitarian aid. So there's still restriction on bringing in supplies and medication and food, in terms of the large numbers that are really required. So only a limited number is coming in. I think the longer, and this is a personal opinion, the longer it takes for all of these elements to come together, the stronger Hamas would become,
And of course
and will
that would also
reassert, yeah, will reassert power.
And of course, that would also include Israeli withdrawals
Mm-hmm.
from Gaza. And so I really want to thank you for your time and your lifelong devotion and everything you've done to move things forward to see self-determination for both peoples who can live in peace together. And we wish you all the best in supporting this and promoting this. And hope to see that sooner rather than later, although it's not happening immediately tomorrow, to that we see this happening and that we'll see that you've both contributed to that. I don't know if you'd like to make any closing remarks or anything like that before we end the webinar.
Just
Just
thank you very much.
to thank you very much, really, for the time that you dedicate to our long conflict. And we cannot even promise you that you will not have to spend money on it in the future. And time, of course.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much. We wish you the best. We all, all of us uh, um, are deeply committed to peace and to self-determination for both peoples. And we can't thank you enough and hope to see you in person in the future at Michigan State. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
best wishes for a better future and for both of you as well.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.